I never thought it would end like this. Not here. Not now. I've spent years working my way through the cold, calculating corridors of Harrison Capital, fighting for respect, fighting for something more. And now, here I am, standing in front of the boardroom doors, the weight of $1 billion deal pressing down on my chest. I glance at the pristine reflection of myself in the glass. My hands are steady, but my heart's racing. This merger is supposed to be the deal that sets me free, the one that finally proves to my family, to men, that I'm more than just the youngest son with a fancy degree. I'm the one who's been handling the hard work behind the scenes. The one who has stayed up all night, poring over numbers, making sure everything falls into place. But none of that matters right now. The door slams open. Tiffany Ross walks in, as if she owns the place, her stiletto heels clicking sharply against the polished floor. Her presence fills the room like a storm, loud and unsettling. She's 28, freshly minted from an Ivy League school with nothing but a father's connections behind her. No real understanding of the inner workings of the firm. She's not here to save the deal, she's here to make a name for herself. I don't say a word, but I can already feel the shift in the air. You're late. She doesn't even look at me as she tosses her coat over the back of the chair. Her tone is condescending. A little too much for my liking. I've been reviewing the final clauses for the merger, I reply, keeping my voice calm, neutral. It's not the first time I've been asked to work under pressure. But this time feels different. This time, it feels personal. Tiffany walks past me, her perfume sharp in the air, a cloud of jasmine and dominance. It's a mess, she says, her words cutting through the tension. Who approved this draft? It's all wrong. I let the insult slide off me. The draft has been reviewed by legal and financials. It's fine. Her smirk grows, and I can feel it like a slap. Maybe I should have a look myself, she says, picking up my tablet, swiping the screen with an air of superiority. Is this what we're working with? This? She taps a file, pointing at the clauses on the screen, which I've already gone over a dozen times. Code of conduct violations. Just like your outfit. You don't belong here. My pulse spikes. The temperature in the room feels like it just dropped 20 degrees. I see the disdain in her eyes, and I realize it's not just the merger she's targeting. It's me. She steps back, making a show of scanning my appearance with a critical eye. You've violated dress code. A shame. For someone in your position, she sneers, her voice like a blade. Pearl buttons? A distressed leather bag? What is this, a fashion show? I blink, the shock still hanging in the air. I'm wearing a vintage Armani blazer, the one that's been my go-to for years. A perfect fit. I've worn it to some of the highest stakes meetings, and it's never once raised a concern. But this is not about the blazer. This is about her asserting control. I stand up slowly, the anger bubbling underneath. This isn't about a dress code. This is about you trying to take control of something you don't understand. My voice is steady, but beneath it, I'm boiling. You're about to ruin a $3 billion deal because you think you can dictate what people wear. Her eyes flash, and for a moment, I think she might back down. But then she leans in, eyes narrowing with a calculated, icy resolve. You're fired. Effective immediately. Pack your things, and leave. The words hit like a punch to the gut, but there's no time for shock. This is business. This is survival. I look around the room, the analysts frozen in their seats, the assistants unsure of whether they should say something. Silence. I can feel their eyes on me, waiting for a reaction. They want me to beg. They want me to plead. Instead, I smile coldly. I make my way to the door, and as I pass by Tiffany, I let my shoulder brush against hers. You can't be serious, I say, my voice calm, a knife hidden in the words. You've just fired the one person who's been running the merger for the last year. She flinches, but only for a second. She's already too far gone, lost in her own power trip. She doesn't know what she's just set in motion. The door closes behind me, and I hear Tiffany call out, "Security will escort you out." I don't turn around. Instead, I walk down the hall, my mind already calculating the next steps. I can feel it in the air, the storm is coming, and it's going to be a hell of a ride. The deal, the family, my future, everything is on the line now. And this time, I won't be the one who's forgotten. I stepped out of the building, the cold San Francisco air hitting me like a slap in the face. I could feel the weight of the moment, my heart pounding in my chest. The merger, the deal that was supposed to change everything, had just slipped through my fingers. But there was no time to dwell on it. Not now. Not when I could already hear the whispers in my head. "You've been made the fool." I kept my head down as I walked to my car, trying to ignore the looks from the analysts and associates watching me leave. Tiffany Ross had made her move, but I wasn't ready to back down. Not by a long shot. I had spent too many years building my career, fighting against the odds, to be taken out by a corporate puppet like her. I fumbled for my phone, my hands shaking just a little. I was angry. But I was also calm, too calm. This wasn't the end. It couldn't be. There was something more at play here. Tiffany didn't just fire me for violating some archaic dress code. No, she was after more than that. I hit Sarah's number, hoping she hadn't left yet. She answered on the second ring, her voice tight. "Jack? Are you all right?" "I'm fine," I said. "Listen, I need everything you have on the merger. All the documents, the clauses, everything we've been working on. I'll need them by tonight." Jack, I don't know," Sarah hesitated. "This doesn't make sense. Tiffany's dad, Richard Ross, he's been pulling strings behind the scenes. I overheard her talking to him last week." My blood ran cold. Richard Ross. The name was like a virus in my mind. I had suspected something wasn't right for months, but this was bigger than I thought. I had always known Richard had ties in high places, but I never imagined he'd get involved directly with Harrison Capital. I ran my hand through my hair, pacing outside the building. "Did you hear anything specific?" There was a long pause before Sarah spoke again, her voice lower this time. "They've been talking about a shakeup. Tiffany's dad thinks he can pull off this merger with or without you. I think. They've been trying to push you out, Jack. 4 months." The words hit me like a punch in the stomach. They had been setting me up all along. I had been nothing more than a pawn, a tool to get the deal done. And now, Tiffany was going to ruin everything I'd worked for. "Get me the files, Sarah. Do it quickly. We're running out of time." I hung up before she could respond. My mind was racing, my thoughts jumbled. The pieces were coming together, too slowly, but they were coming. Tiffany wasn't just a rookie making a power move. She was playing a game she didn't fully understand, but there was someone behind her pulling the strings. And I was going to find out who. I slid into my car, the engine roaring to life. The streets of the city blurred past me as I headed back to my apartment. The skyscrapers towered above, but it was the dark alleyways, the hidden corners, where the real battles were fought. I had been on the edge for too long, and now I was stepping back into the ring. When I reached my apartment, I paced in front of the door before finally unlocking it. I stepped inside and let the door click shut behind me. The apartment was quiet, but it felt like something was lingering in the air, like I wasn't alone. A cold draft hit my skin as I moved toward the desk, but I didn't pay it any attention. I sat down and pulled out my laptop, connecting to the encrypted files Sarah had sent. The screen flickered to life, and the files opened one by one. As I scanned through the documents, a feeling of unease settled deep in my stomach. There it was, buried deep in the clauses, hidden behind corporate jargon. A clause that shouldn't have been there. It was small, buried under a series of financials, but it was enough. The clause indicated that once the merger went through, Richard Ross and his firm would have complete control over Harrison Capital's assets, specifically, a portion tied to the deal I was working on. This wasn't just about power. This was about control. The realization hit me hard. This wasn't about the merger anymore. It was about Richard Ross's plan to take everything, my family's legacy, the company I'd worked my ass off for, and my future. I slammed my fist onto the desk, sending papers flying. This ends now. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me. Not when I had everything to lose. I grabbed my coat and walked to the window, staring out at the city. The wind had picked up, howling through the streets below. The sun was setting, casting a long shadow over the city. The streets looked peaceful, calm, but I knew better. In this city, nothing was ever truly calm. It was just waiting for the storm to come. And I was going to be the one to bring it. I turned from the window and walked back to my desk, dialing the only number I knew would be able to help me. Marcus Harrington, the CEO of Harrison Capital. A man I had spent years working under, a man who could change everything. If Marcus was involved with Richard Ross, then he was either the key to stopping this or the final nail in my coffin. The phone rang once. Then twice. He answered on the third. Jack, his voice was cold, as usual. What's going on? Are you involved with Richard Ross? I asked, the words spilling out before I could stop them. There was a pause, a long silence on the other end. I think you know the answer to that. I swallowed hard. This is it. The line has been drawn. What if I said I had everything I needed to ruin this merger? I asked, voice steady, a chill in my veins. What would you do? His voice softened. If I were you, Jack, I'd be very careful with what you know. Cliffhanger. I hung up the phone, my heart racing. I had just crossed the line, and I wasn't sure I could come back from it. I slammed the phone down. The room seemed to close in around me, the edges of the walls pressing inward. Marcus's words lingered in my head, cold and calculated. He had warned me to be careful with what I knew, but what did that mean? Was he warning me, or threatening me? There was no time to question it. I needed answers, and I needed them fast. The screen of my phone lit up with an incoming message from Sarah. Her text was brief but to the point. I found something. Meet me at the usual spot. I didn't need to ask what she had found. I already knew it was something big. The city outside my apartment was dark now, the skyline punctuated by the sharp lights of towering buildings. It had been hours since I'd been fired, but it felt like a lifetime. I grabbed my coat and headed out, the weight of my next move pressing heavily on my shoulders. I reached the corner cafe where Sarah and I had met countless times over the years. She was sitting in the back booth, her eyes darting around nervously. As soon as she saw me, she stood up, her face pale. I've been looking through everything, she whispered, sliding a file across the table. And I think I found the connection. It's bigger than we thought, Jack. Richard Ross isn't just playing a game with Tiffany. He's been pulling strings from the very beginning. I flipped open the file. The first document I saw was a transaction record, payments from a mysterious offshore account linked to a shell company, with connections to both Richard Ross and Marcus Harrington. My heart skipped a beat. I looked up at Sarah, my voice low. Marcus? He's involved? She nodded, her eyes wide. I didn't want to believe it, but the more I dug, the clearer it became. They've been setting you up for months, Jack. The merger, it was never about the company. It's about taking control of everything. I leaned back in my seat, the cold reality sinking in. It was all a setup. Tiffany was just a pawn, and Marcus had been manipulating the entire situation from the shadows. But what did he want? What was his endgame? I swallowed hard, my fingers tapping on the table. This isn't just business. This is personal. But how far does this go? Before Sarah could respond, I heard a noise behind me, the footsteps approaching fast. I turned, half expecting someone from the company, but it was only a man in a dark coat, standing just outside the cafe. His gaze was fixed on me, unwavering. Get out, Sarah hissed, pushing me toward the back exit. We've got to move, now. I didn't ask questions. I followed her through the narrow alleyway, my mind racing. Who was that man? Why was he watching us? I was no stranger to the feeling of being watched, but this was different, more intense, more dangerous. We reached the street, and Sarah quickly hailed a cab. As I slid into the back seat, I caught a glimpse of the man again, this time across the street. He was still staring, and something about the way he stood there, so still, so deliberate, sent a chill down my spine. The cab sped off, the city blurring past me in a whirlwind of lights. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, expecting another message from Sarah, but it was something else, an encrypted email from an anonymous sender. The subject line read, "I know what Marcus is planning." I opened the message, my fingers trembling. The contents were simple, but the implications were enormous. A single line, "The key to everything lies in the Tokyo deal. Find the appendix." The Tokyo deal. I remembered it, the biggest acquisition Harrison Capital had ever pursued. It was supposed to close in a week, but something about it had always felt off. I had brushed it aside, thinking it was just the pressure of the merger. But now, I realized, I had missed something. Something critical. I glanced up at Sarah, who was watching me carefully, sensing the shift in my focus. "The Tokyo deal," I muttered under my breath. "That's the key." "Exactly," Sarah said. "And it's bigger than you think. We need to get to those files before Marcus does." The weight of it hit me like a freight train. If Marcus was really behind everything, then he'd be expecting me to make a move. I wasn't just dealing with a corporate takeover anymore, I was dealing with something far darker. There was a ticking clock, and every move I made brought me closer to the edge. I had to get to the bottom of this, and fast. The Tokyo deal was the key. We arrived at a building on the outskirts of the city, a nondescript office tucked between towering skyscrapers. The place was quiet, almost too quiet. I had been here before, but tonight felt different. The air was thick with anticipation, and I knew that what I found here could either save me or destroy me. As we stepped inside, the lights flickered, casting long shadows on the walls. The receptionist wasn't at her desk, an unusual thing, considering the time. I motioned for Sarah to follow, moving quickly down the hallway toward the secured office. I had the keycard, one of the few perks I had left. Just as I inserted the card into the lock, the sound of footsteps echoed in the hallway behind us. My pulse quickened. We weren't alone. I whipped around, but saw nothing. Just the empty hallway stretching behind us. "Jack," Sarah whispered. Her voice was strained, low. "Someone's coming. We have to go." I hesitated, looking at the door. The file was inside. The answers were inside. But so was the danger. The game had just changed. Cliffhanger. The sound of a door creaking open made my blood run cold. Someone had already gotten to the files. I stared at the locked door, my heart pounding as the realization hit me. Someone had already gotten to the files. The keycard had worked earlier, but now, the door was ajar, and the room beyond felt too silent. Too empty. I motioned for Sarah to stay back, but she was already stepping forward, eyes scanning the shadows. The tension in the air was thick, like a fog rolling in. My hand hovered near the doorframe, my breath shallow, as if every second might reveal something far worse than I expected. "Don't go in," I whispered to Sarah, my voice low but urgent. But she was already there, pushing the door wide open. The office was still, every item in place, nothing disturbed. Except the desk drawer, the one I had left locked. It was now wide open. My stomach dropped. "We're too late," I muttered. "They've been here." Sarah moved cautiously to the desk, her fingers brushing over the documents scattered across the top. "No, this is..." She paused, picking up a file and flipping through it. "This is different." I moved closer, my eyes scanning the contents. It was a new draft of the Tokyo deal, one I had never seen. The numbers were skewed, adjusted in ways that didn't make sense. There was a hidden clause I didn't recognize, linked to assets that didn't appear on the original files. Whoever did this. They wanted us to find it, I muttered. The chill down my spine was palpable. It was as if the room had been waiting for us to walk into it, to uncover exactly what we needed. Sarah looked up at me, her face pale. You know what this means, right? This isn't just about the merger anymore. This is about control. I nodded, my mind racing. Control of everything. And they've been using us as pawns in a game we didn't even know was happening. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind us. My heart stopped. A figure stood there, tall, imposing. It was Marcus Harrington. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes were cold, calculating. You should have stayed away, Jack. The words hit me like a slap. How long had he been watching us? I didn't flinch. I thought you were just a spectator in all this, Marcus. But it looks like you've been playing the game too. He smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was a predator's grin, sharp and predatory. This game was never about being a spectator, Jack. You should have understood that by now. You and your family, you think you control Harrison Capital, but you're just another piece in a much bigger puzzle. I stepped forward, my pulse quickening. And Tiffany? What role does she play in all of this? Marcus' smile faded, his eyes narrowing. Tiffany was a tool. Just like you were. But she failed. And now, she'll pay for it. The air between us crackled, charged with an unspoken threat. And what happens to me, Marcus? When the merger collapses? When everything falls apart? He chuckled softly, almost pityingly. You think you can stop this? You have no idea what you're up against. What we're up against. It took every ounce of control I had not to lash out. You think you've won, don't you? That this is some final victory for you and Richard Ross. But you've underestimated something. His brow furrowed, intrigued. What's that? The one thing you and Richard didn't count on. Me. I saw the flicker of surprise in his eyes, quickly masked by the arrogance that had defined him all these years. He took a step back, his gaze fixed on me. What exactly do you think you can do, Jack? Before I could respond, the sound of sirens wailed faintly in the distance, but it wasn't the police. It was something more subtle. The kind of noise that could be ignored, but never fully forgotten. Suddenly, Sarah's phone rang, slicing through the tension like a knife. She answered it quickly, her face paling as she listened. Jack. It's Sarah, she said, her voice shaking. It's happening. The board. They're pulling the deal. Right now. Marcus is moving forward without us. Without you. The room felt like it was spinning, but everything in my body locked into focus. The deal was slipping away. And with it, any chance of stopping Marcus and Richard Ross from taking full control. I turned to Marcus, my voice cold. You think this ends with me? You think I'll just walk away and let you destroy everything? Marcus didn't answer immediately. Instead, he took a long look at me, measuring, calculating, as though deciding what his next move would be. You've already lost, Jack. But I'll give you a piece of advice, take what you can now. Because the rest? It's not yours to take anymore. Cliffhanger. I looked at Sarah, who was still holding the phone, her hand trembling. What's going on, Sarah? I asked urgently, my throat tightening. She didn't answer immediately. Her gaze was fixed on the door behind us. Jack. There's someone else. Someone else here. And they know everything. The lights flickered above me, casting erratic shadows in the dim room. I could feel the sweat starting to bead on the back of my neck, the oppressive silence ringing in my ears. Something was wrong. Something was off. Sarah had gone pale, her eyes wide as she looked from the door to me, then back again. My stomach twisted into a knot. I was used to high-pressure situations. Hell, I had spent my life in them, but tonight, something felt different. This wasn't just about business anymore. This was personal. Jack. Sarah's voice trembled as she whispered, "You're not going to like this." Before I could ask what she meant, I heard it, the unmistakable sound of footsteps approaching. Heavy. Measured. Unhurried. Someone was coming. I held up my hand, signaling for her to stay silent. The hairs on my arm stood up. It wasn't the sound of a casual office worker. No, this was deliberate. A threat. I moved quickly, pulling Sarah behind a nearby partition. My mind raced, running through every possible scenario. Had Marcus figured it out? Was he here to finish what he started? The door creaked open, the figure silhouetted in the doorway. My pulse skipped. Tina. For a moment, I froze. What was she doing here? The assistant I had trusted. The same woman who had been feeding information to Tiffany, who had been playing both sides. I had thought she was just a pawn, but now I saw the truth. She wasn't just a piece on the board. She was one of the players. She stepped into the room, her eyes scanning the space, calculating. "I figured you'd be here," she said, her voice cool, detached. "You always were predictable, Jack." I could barely speak. My throat felt tight, like a vice was squeezing it. I choked out. "You were working with Marcus." Tina didn't deny it. Instead, she smiled, cold and triumphant. "Working with him?" "No, Jack. I'm working for him. There's a difference." I took a step back, my mind whirling. For him. She was in deeper than I thought. But how? Why? "I've known for a while," she continued, her eyes narrowing, "that you were too naive to see it. Marcus never needed you, Jack. He's always had control. He's been pulling the strings from the very beginning." The words hit me like a punch. Marcus. It was always Marcus. I had been so focused on Richard Ross, on Tiffany, but the true architect had been standing right in front of me all along. "You think this is over?" Tina sneered. "That you're going to save the company? You're just another piece in the game. You're already done." A sharp coldness shot through me. "I'm done?" I spat, taking another step forward. "You think I'm the one who's done? You've been playing me like a fool, Tina. And you've been playing him too." Tina's eyes flashed, and for a second, I saw something, regret? No. It was something colder. Calculated. "You don't know who you're dealing with," she said, her voice low. "Marcus has a plan, and you don't fit into it. I was supposed to make sure you failed. But now." She smiled, stepping toward me, her heels clicking on the floor. "You've given me the perfect opportunity to step in. To take your place." "Take my place?" My hands curled into fists, my heart pounding in my chest. I couldn't let her do this. I couldn't let her win. Before I could respond, the door slammed shut behind us. We both turned to see Marcus standing there, his expression unreadable, cold as always. My blood ran cold at the sight of him. This was the man who had been pulling the strings. The man who had orchestrated this entire game. Tina stepped back, but Marcus didn't move. His gaze was locked on me, piercing. "You're still alive," he said, his voice flat. "I thought we'd buried you, Jack." I didn't back down. "You're the one who's buried, Marcus. You've been hiding behind people like Tina. Behind your lies. But it's over now." Marcus smiled, the kind of smile that made you wonder if you had miscalculated everything. "Is it, Jack? You still think you're in control here? You still think you can stop me?" I stepped toward him, ignoring the sweat on my brow, the tremble in my hands. "I'm done playing by your rules," I said, my voice steady. "And you're done too." Marcus chuckled. "You think you can take me down? You have nothing, Jack. You're nothing without this company." I looked him in the eyes, a strange calm settling over me. Maybe so. But I'm not alone anymore. Tina's face froze. What do you mean? I didn't answer. Instead, I pulled out my phone and hit send. A moment later, the faint buzz of a phone echoed from the back of the room. Tina's eyes widened as her phone vibrated in her pocket. Her face turned pale. She reached for the phone, but I was faster. I grabbed it from her hand and held it up. The screen lit up with an incoming call from Sarah. I smiled, the realization dawning on her face. It's over, Tina. Her breathing quickened, but before she could react, I turned to Marcus, my voice deadly calm. I've already sent everything to the press. Your plans, your dirty deals, everything. It's all coming out. You and Richard won't have anywhere to hide. Marcus's expression didn't change. You're making a mistake, Jack. You have no idea what you're doing. But it was too late. The truth was out, and there was no turning back. Cliffhanger. Tina's phone slipped from her hand, hitting the floor with a dull thud. Marcus stepped forward, his face darkening. You think you've won? You don't understand the game, Jack. You're just a player. And players don't always survive. I sat in the dimly lit office, the weight of everything that had transpired pressing down on me like a heavy fog. The file sat open on the desk in front of me, proof of everything I had suspected, and more. This wasn't just about the merger, or Marcus, or Tiffany. This was about something far bigger, something I hadn't seen until now, a battle for power, control, and who gets to define the future of Harrison Capital. The truth was clear now, written out in black and white. The connections between Marcus and Richard Ross, the shell companies, the dirty deals, all of it had led to one inevitable conclusion. There was no escaping the fall that was coming for them, and I was the one who had the power to make sure it happened. My fingers brushed the cold glass of the whiskey bottle beside me. I hadn't slept in days, hadn't eaten properly. The adrenaline was wearing off, and exhaustion was creeping in, but I couldn't afford to rest yet. Not when the stakes were this high. A knock on the door broke my thoughts. I didn't need to look up to know who it was. Sarah stepped in, her face as tense as mine, but with a different kind of weight. She had been the one piecing everything together, digging through the lies, finding the cracks in the empire Marcus had built. "You're sure?" she asked, her voice quiet. I nodded. "It's done. Everything is in motion now. Marcus and Richard won't have a leg to stand on." She glanced at the file on the desk, her expression unreadable. "And what about you? What happens to you when it all comes out?" I leaned back in my chair, letting out a breath. "I don't know. But at least I won't be a pawn anymore. I'll have the control this time. Not them." There was a silence between us, filled only by the hum of the city outside. I could hear the distant sirens, the traffic, the everyday noise of the world going on as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. The balance of power had shifted, and now, it was my move. "You've risked everything for this," Sarah continued, her voice tight with concern. "Are you ready for the consequences?" I met her gaze. No one can run from consequences. But I can choose how I face them. A strange sense of clarity washed over me in that moment. I had spent my life chasing success, trying to prove that I was more than just a younger sibling, more than just a man behind the curtain. But now, as I stared at the file in front of me, I realized something. I had always been playing the game the way they wanted me to. But now, the game was mine to control. Tiffany's betrayal had been the final piece in the puzzle, the last push I needed to finally see through the lies. She had fired me, thinking it would be the end of me. But what she didn't know was that it was just the beginning. In one move, I had leveled the playing field, and Marcus was no longer untouchable. I stood up, walking over to the window. The city stretched out before me, vast and unforgiving. The night sky was clear, the stars barely visible against the artificial lights. For a moment, everything seemed still, suspended in time. But beneath that stillness, the wheels were already turning. I had made my choice, and now, I had to live with it. Do you think Marcus will come after you? Sarah asked. I turned back to face her, the weight of the question settling in my chest. If he does, it won't be the first time someone tried to take me down. But this time, I won't be the one who's forgotten. The sound of a phone vibrating on the desk cut through the silence. I looked at it. A message from an unknown number. The press is already circling. They know everything. It's your move now. I looked up at Sarah, her eyes wide. It's starting, I said, more to myself than to her. The truth was out. The corporate world, the world I had fought so hard to be a part of, was about to come crashing down. Marcus, Richard, Tina, they would all fall, and I would be the one standing in the wreckage, watching it all burn. I walked over to my desk, picking up the file and holding it firmly in my hands. The documents, the secret deals, the hidden clauses, they had all led to this. And now, it was my turn to write the ending. Are you sure this is the right thing to do? Sarah asked again. I paused, the weight of the question lingering in the air. Sometimes, you have to burn everything down to build something new, I said, my voice steady. This isn't just about revenge. This is about taking back control. Taking back what was always mine. I turned and walked out of the office, feeling the eyes of the world on me. The storm had arrived, and there was no turning back. The streets were still noisy, bustling, oblivious to the destruction unfolding in the high-rise buildings above them. But I knew something they didn't. The game was changing, and this time, I was the one calling the shots. The city was full of wolves in sheep's clothing. But I was done being the sheep. Cliffhanger. As I walked toward the elevator, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a call from Marcus. The game was far from over. But as I stepped into the elevator, I knew one thing for sure: I was ready for the final confrontation.